Zombies, the one type of AI that everyone wants to create when they're starting out using a game engine. Now, the zombie AI itself isn't very complicated, but it's a good stepping stone towards more complicated AI, such as NPCs or other enemies that are more advanced. So in this tutorial, we'll be going over how to create this zombie AI from scratch and set up his different states. So here we have an idle state. If we get too close, he starts running towards us, and if he catches up to us, then he'll start hitting us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'll do is create a new blend file. Then here we'll set up the default settings, so Blender Game Engine and GeoSL. Here we'll also choose Texture View. Now before you create your AI, it's good practice to plan it all out with all the different transitions between the states and what you want to happen on each state. So here is the basic model for what we'll be creating in this tutorial. So we're going to have an idle state, we're going to have a state that runs towards the player, then joining to that we're going to have a state that has pathfinding. Basically running towards the player won't be looking for obstacles, pathfinding will be looking for obstacles. And for both of these states they can also interact with the hit player. And this is again basically triggered when the player gets too close. So fairly straightforward. Again, for more complex AI, like ones that shoot and all the rest, then you'd obviously have a much larger diagram. But again, even with simple AI, it's good to plan out. So for our zombie model, what I'm going to do is go over to Blend Swap here. We're going to go to search and type in zombie. And what we want to do is we want to go down to this low poly zombie. So here on the zombie page, I'm going to go down here and click download. So once you've downloaded the blend file, you need to extract it out so you can access the contents inside. Then once you've done that, we're going to go up here to File and click Append. So here I've extracted it out to my desktop. I'm going to click on it and then go to Object, and we want to choose Zombie and Armature. Then click Append from Library, and here we'll have our two objects added. Now there is a couple tweaks that we'll have to add. So first of all, let's change our lighting to Hemi. Alt R, get rid of rotation, press X and delete the cube, Shift A, add ourselves in a plane, S and make it 50 to scale it 50 units. And now what we'll do is we're going to select our mesh here of the zombie, then we're going to go here to the UV maps and remove this first one. Okay, so that should be good, and I think that is all we need to do. Also make it no collision. Then we're going to press Shift A and we're going to add ourselves in a collider. So here I'm going to choose cube. Then we'll make it dynamic. Under the collision bounds, let's choose cylinder to allow it to go around corners easy. And then I'm going to press S, Shift Z, and that will scale it on both of the other axes. We'll move it up. SZ, scale it on the Z axis. And we want something roughly like that. Okay, so that's good. That sort of encapsulates most of the player. Then with it selected, I'm going to hold down Shift, select the cube or the movement cube, and Control P and set as a parent. Okay, so now we should be able to move it around like so. Then what we're going to do is up here, Game Logic, and again, Texture View. And here we're going to get started with our AI. So first of all, we need to create some animations. So over here, Dope Sheet. And as you can see, we already have one animation, and that looks like a walking animation. So we'll use that. Here, choose Action Editor. And from here, with the rig selected, you can see which ones we have applied. So here, what I'm going to do is select the F to make sure that the animation is saved. Then we're going to go here and add a plus. And this here is going to be a new walk animation. We're going to rename it to Idle. And then what I'm going to do is press A to deselect. Then I'm going to go to the first frame here, press Control K to select it, and then Control I to select all the other ones, and then press X and delete keyframes. Then what we're going to do is give ourselves a timeline down here. We're going to go to frame 20. Then we're going to go into pose mode here. And I'm just going to add something really simple. If you want to, you can make it as complicated as you like. But just for this tutorial, I'm going to keep it fairly simple. So like before, we're just going to have a moving head. Press RX to rotate it backwards a bit, then I, and insert location rotation. Then we're just going to copy and paste this first frame here. So A to deselect, Control K, and then Shift D, GX40. Alright. So again, let's go back here to object mode. Now what we're also going to do is select the F here to make sure that it's saved. And then on our armature here, we're going to add ourselves two action actuators. So the first action actuator here is going to be for idle, and the second one will be for walk. Then here, for both of them, it's 40 as the end frame. And now what we'll do is modify how they're being played. So the idle we want to constantly loop, so let's choose loop stop. This one here, maybe also add a priority of 1. Then here we have walk, let's leave the priority at 0, and we'll leave it at play. Then I'm going to add one more, and this one is going to be when the zombie gets too close to the player and we want him to hit the player. So again, to pose mode, and let's add ourselves in a new animation, call this hit, select the F, and then Control K, Control I, X delete. Then here we're going to go over to frame 20, actually frame 10, and we're just going to have a really basic hitting animation. So he's going to bring his arm down, like so. I insert keyframe, then frame 20, he's going to bring it up and hit the player. Press I and location rotation again, and then we basically just want it to go back to the state it was in before. So again, in the action editor here, A to deselect, and then we're going to press the down arrow and just go to the start, or you can just drag it, up to you. Then I'm going to press Control K and Shift D GX40 like last time. Okay, so here we go, just slapping and then back to the start. Alright, so this here is going to be called hit, and we're going to have the hit animation. This is going to have a priority of 0. Maybe let's make this one 1 and this one 2. And here an end of 40. And again, let's make this loop stop. Alright, so minimize all of these. And then what we're going to do is we have to add some AI to our character here. So let's go back to object mode. We can select it down here. Select our main cube. So if we go back to our diagram here, you can see we have an idle state, a run towards player state, pathfinding, and hitting the player. So first of all, we're going to address the idle state. So over here on our cube, the idle state is just going to be playing an idle animation. So here what we'll do is add always, add an action, and then actually no action. We just want to add an and then we want to hold down shift and select the rig, and from here we want to choose the idle animation. So now that we've done idle, we want some sort of transition to go from that all the way to running towards the player. So as a trigger, what I'm going to do is here we'll add a ray, and this is basically going to be going on the -y, and it will be checking for the property player. Let's give him some vision, so 15, and that's basically going to be 15 units outwards. And so once he encounters a object with the property player on it, then he'll move to the second state. So again, it's going to be the -y axis, and then here what we'll do on our cube, we're going to add ourselves in a state. And this is going to switch the state from the current one to another one. So here, we'll join the two together. So once that does happen, we need to switch to state 2. Now what we want to do is click the plus so we can see all our different states, and then here I'm going to select the second state. So if we go back to the diagram, on our second state we have a run towards player. And basically how we can do that is just track to the player and run towards him. So running will be motion, so let's go over here to our cube, add ourselves in a motion. And here we'll also add a edit object, and then we'll change that to a track to. And the track to just basically looks towards an object. Now at the moment we don't have anything for our object to track to, so let's go ahead and change that. What I'm going to do is press N and scroll all the way down here, and we'll have an FPS setup. This is basically an add-on I made, so don't worry if it's not there. There'll be a download link in the description if you want to get it, or you can just create your own FPS setup. I'm just going to move the cursor here, click add FPS setup, and it's sorted, so we're ready to go. Here I'm going to add the property player, and there we go, that's all I've done. And so now if we scale it down, maybe 0.75, we should be able to activate the zombie here to state 2. So on state 2, we want him to track towards the player body. We'll give it some delay, so it's not snapping immediately. And we want the tracking axis to be -y. Then we also want the movement to be on the -y as well. Alright, so maybe -0.1. Then we'll add ourselves an always, join the two together. Whoops, and join this one in, like so. Okay, and now we also need an animation to play, so let's go over here, make it true, and join this in with action.01. We can rename it walk, and that will basically just be playing the walk animation constantly. Now what we want to do is have a look at our other state here, which was below this, and this was for pathfinding. So if our zombie here encounters an object, we want him to start pathfinding around that object. And this also ensures we aren't always using pathfinding, as this can be expensive in regards to performance. So to detect an object, I'm going to be using a ray sensor again. You can also use a collision, or you can use a near sensor, up to you. So here I'm going to be using -y again, so it's forward. Here we're going to have a range of maybe 3, and then we'll be choosing object. So if that does happen, we want it to start pathfinding, and basically here we're going to add another state, and it's going to switch to state 3. Now on state 3, what we want to do is we want to add an always. Here we want to add a steering, and then move it over here, and this one over here, and we want to choose path following. Target object is going to be player body, nav mesh we'll worry about later, and velocity maybe down to 1. Acceleration down to 2, facing we can turn off, and maybe visualize just so we can see what's happening. So if we go back to our diagram here, you'll notice once we have run towards a player, we're going to do some pathfinding, but then we also want to go back to running towards the player once the pathfinding is finished. So in this case, I'm just going to be using a delay, and let's just make this 120, so 2 seconds, and then it will go back to running towards the player, or just checking if there's another obstacle in the way. So here we're going to add ourselves in a state, and it's just going to set it back to state 2. So here and join it in, and join this one in as well. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to add a walking animation as well, like so, and this will also need to be true. Now we should probably test it out to make sure it's working. So first of all, we're going to select the eye here, and then we're going to go into the render settings and choose debug properties. Then we're going to go into this window here, numpad 0, and then press P to play. So once our zombie here enters state 2, it runs towards us really fast. So we need to go ahead and tune that down a bit. So on state 2 here, we're going to change the motion to maybe -0.02, and try that out again. There we go, that's a bit better. So maybe even -0.01. And we're going to scale up our zombie here, so S1.25, or actually S2, and moving up a bit. Alright, P, and okay, maybe not so much, S.75. Alright, something like that should be good. Now let's make our cube here invisible as well. And so now, our idle state, which works fine. Now he's going to move towards us. And we haven't set up pathfinding yet, so we won't be switching to state 3 just yet, but we'll do that afterwards. So now what we want to do is we want to set up our fourth state here. When he gets close to the player, we want him to hit the player and cause damage. So on our player here, what you can do is add a message, and it can be receiving the message damage. And when it receives that, it can minus health from the player and from the heads-up display and everything. So in this tutorial we won't be going over that, but that's basically how you'd set up damage to be taken from the player. So on the zombie object here, what we're going to do is we're going to add another state, and this one here is going to be the last one when it's hitting the player. So here I'm going to add an always, and then we'll add a and here is just going to be playing the hitting animation. Now what we need to do is, if we look back at the diagram, you'll notice we have this transition here and this one here. So that means that there's a trigger from this one and from this one that causes it to go to hit player. And for this tutorial, I'm going to make it a near sensor. So here what I'm going to do is on my cube, I'm going to have a near player and maybe a distance of, let's say 2 or 3. And then once that happens, we're going to set a state of state 4 and we'll join it in. Alright, and we're going to do the same on state 3. So just in case, so we don't need to reset up everything, I'm going to select the pin here and the pin here as well. So now if we go to state 3, you'll notice both of those are still there and we only need to add an AND. So on state 4 here, I'm going to unpin these and we're going to add ourselves another near sensor. This time it's going to be a distance of maybe 4. So this one should be larger than the one that triggered it. And again for player, so we're going to add ourselves an AND and then invert this. So when this is not happening, and then we want to go over here as a state and we want to move it back to state 1. So actually instead of state 1, let's make it state 2. Cool, so now once he gets near us, he should start hitting the player. So numpad 0, press play, moves towards the player, and state 4, and he's hitting us. So if you want to, you can tweak the distance values and everything else. Now we're going to get into the nav mesh stuff. So this is where it gets a bit more complicated and involves pathfinding and everything else. So first of all, I'm going to give this a texture, so we have some context for distance and stuff. So here we'll add a material, no specular, and add ourselves in just a standard texture. Alright, so something like this should be fine, just anything random, U and unwrap. Okay, scale doesn't really matter, but if you are fussed about it, you can just scale this up here, and there we go, that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to add ourselves in some obstacles. So, okay, let's say that I've created myself a map here, and I have this obstacle here on my map, and I have another obstacle here on my map, and one more here and here. Okay, so I have some obstacles in my map that my AI is going to have to navigate around. So if you do have this, then what you want to do is select all of your obstacles, like so, and then you want to hold down Shift, select the main floor item, then press Ctrl J, and that will join them all together. Then what you need to do is go over here to the scene settings, navigation mesh, and build navigation mesh. So then that's going to add another mesh on top, and this is what our AI is going to use to navigate around the level. So now what you can do is you can just press tab to go into edit mode, select all these parts that you've joined together, press Ctrl L, and then P, and separate by loose parts, and so now you have all your objects separated again. But the origin, the yellow sort of circle, is going to be in the same spot. So basically go over here, set origin to geometry. So now you can set up collisions and everything else like you had it before. It's just for setting up the nav mesh that you have to join it together. Okay, so here you notice we have some errors on the top. Basically the AI is never going to use this. So we can just go ahead and select this. And just select all the vertices and delete them. Basically because we don't need it. So here we have our nav mesh, and then on our AI, what I'm going to do is on state 3, we're going to add ourselves in a nav mesh, like so. Now this obstacle awareness that we have, so I think it's on state 2 with the ray, we might need to increase that to 5, and then on each of our objects here, we're going to add ourselves a object property. So we're going to select all of these and then select the first one last. Then we're going to go to object and then all the way down to game and copy properties object. So now all of these will have object on them as well. Let's make sure the zombie can actually detect them. So maybe we should move them up. SZ. Okay. And so now once it detects this object, it's going to switch to pathfinding mode. So say we go behind a corner like this. The zombie, as it's pathfinding, is going to be looking in a completely opposite direction to where we are. So as you can see here, it's looking straight ahead until it's moving out of pathfinding. And yeah, it doesn't really matter too much, but as you can see here, it's facing the complete wrong direction, and so it just looks wrong. So instead, what we're going to do is just add a really small hack, and that is just here on the armature. We're going to add a track to and player body, and give it some delay. So -y again, and now that just means that when it is here, we'll add this one in, but that basically just means when it is tracking around or pathfinding, it will be looking towards the player as well. Now, one problem you will notice is once it goes into pathfinding mode now, so once the red line appears and then you show up again, the tracking seems to be funny. So yeah, it's gone sideways, which is strange. So to fix that, basically in the steering here, choose facing and -y as the forwards, and then press play. And so now it should, if we stand behind here and wait for the pathfinding to happen, then now once it toggles out of pathfinding, it should return back to normal like so. So if you have any sort of rotational issues where some of them aren't turning properly, you can just press Ctrl A and apply the scale to each of the zombie cubes. But apart from that, that's pretty much it. That's how to create zombie AI that will follow you, and if you get close, they'll hit you. And yeah, just the basics of creating an AI from scratch. So if your one didn't work out, there will be a finished blend in the description below. Hopefully you found this tutorial useful. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, or share down below. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated. But apart from that, hope you guys enjoyed it. Have an awesome week, and I'll see you guys in the next one.